People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. My guest tonight is the Professor of Digital Media and Journalism at the University of Hartford, whose expertise spans international communication and communication for social change and empowerment. I'm pleased to welcome to the studio Professor Sundeep Muppidi. Professor, good evening and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Professor, to start things off, let's take a look at the state of journalism. When we take the global media landscape, we're seeing the dynamics of global media shifting with the exponential rise of social media platforms, streaming services, and digital media. This in turn is reshaping the way in which international communication functions. Help us understand these shifts and how it affects us.
Well, all of us are affected with that, and there are a few reasons. And if you start with the shift from analog to digital, right, and that's when I think legacy journalism and traditional media outlets started feeling the pinch, because with the rise of user-generated content, where the consumer has also become the producer and is producing a lot of information, a lot of successful podcasts and blogs and media outlets have started getting a lot of followers. And there's been a rise in social influences. There's a rise in a lot of first of the block kind of news and stories. And so it has led to a shift in revenue and advertising to online platforms from traditional platforms, which has led to the closure of a lot of newspapers. And there's a lot that's come with that in terms of earlier, if it was traditional journalism, you had gatekeepers, you had an editor, you had a reporter who would fact check and sort of make sure that the information that you're getting, even though it was tilted in a particular way, was at least factually, for the most part, correct. With the kind of information that's out there now, where everyone's producing some information or the other, the biggest sort of loss has been the fact checking of that information. So there's a lot of informational litter out there, and people by themselves do not have the critical ability to sort of distinguish between good information and bad information. And that's led to a lot of issues that we are seeing now.
Professor, alongside this decentralization of journalism and the death of legacy journalism and the rise in digital media and AI, where content is king, where everyone has a podcast, we have seen the rise of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. Government agencies and other stakeholders are almost unable to keep up with the adverse effects of these. So what is our reality then? What can we do to counter?
Our reality is buyer beware, right? In terms of, like, the news is alive, as I keep saying, the news is alive, the paper is dead, but content is king, right? But who's policing that content? Like, it's so much easier now to just use your phone and generate content and say whatever you say, whatever conspiracy theory you have. And the problem has been with the digital world a few things. One, because everyone's putting information out there, whatever information you're searching for, you'll find something that supports that. But two, all the tech companies want your ratings, right? They want as many people as possible to sort of get the ad revenue that they want. And what has that led to is algorithms that sort of give you the content that they think you prefer. That's taking away in any kind of information that doesn't align with what you think. So it's led to sort of this kind of audience mentality where it's like your facts are good as long as they're in line with my opinion. So your opinion is as good as facts now, right? And three, you don't have the incentive to go out and check the accuracy of facts as long as it's in line with your thinking. So now science has also become questionable if it's not in line with your belief systems, right? So there's an increase in tribalism, there's an increase in groupism, there's an increase in blaming the other, and so that's I think the biggest kind of loss that we see in this new world.
Alongside the erosion in established structures, we see a lesser focus made on accountability. How do we bridge this divide?
The bridging will require a lot of effort, especially from the consumer, right? I mean, like regulation in technology in the digital world in every country is about 10 to 15 years behind.
Right.
The technology is developing at such a fast pace. And people, because technology is so affordable and so sort of easy to generate content, everyone's generating content, right? So in this world, the onus shifts to the consumer. What information are you consuming? Why are you consuming from that outlet? And what kind of critical thinking ability do you have to separate fake news from real news? And that becomes more of a problem when you get into misinformation and disinformation, where it's fake news that's generated intentionally for a particular purpose. And I don't think our consumers are at that stage yet where they can separate that out.
We're looking at Trump's America, Elon Musk's X. There is a great need to mainstream fact-checking in a bid to counter the misinformation and disinformation and fake news that's out there. How can all the stakeholders be galvanized? Because we need an informed citizenry in order to push for these changes and shifts as well, Professor.
See, that's assuming that everyone's interested in one particular objective. Right. Because right now we are in a world where everyone's sort of, because of the algorithms, because of the information you're feeding, everyone's living in their own echo chambers. Everyone's going down a rabbit hole, because if you're reading a newspaper and you're turning the page, even if you were there for the sports page, you'd still come across other information that would make you an informed kind of consumer. That doesn't happen with consuming news online. It's like when you go on Amazon and you order a book, it says, based on your reading preference, these are the books that you might like. News has become like that. Based on the stories that you see, all the other news are tailored to you. So anything that is in opposition to your views gets sort of thrown out the window. You don't even see it. But even when you see it, you have what is called a confirmation bias, right? So you only believe information that's in line with your thinking. So anything that is not in your line with your thinking, you actually treat it as not factual. So in Trump's America, with Elon Musk and everyone, like, they have successfully managed to rile up people to believe in a certain way of things, a certain kind of government or whatever. And it requires a lot of different steps for that to work. But there's a critical mass of people who believe whatever Trump says. And it's easy to rile up people. It's easy to, like, if you look at immigration, for instance, which was a hot topic, the number of illegal immigrants that were deported under President Obama in both his terms was the highest. But no one even sort of, or at least a lot of people don't know that, right? But Trump makes it a spectacle, right, about how he's going to deport everyone and all that. And that's intentional. It's intentional because you're creating the paranoia, you're creating the fear, you're creating this, so people sort of coalesce towards his kind of thing. Obama could have done that, but he didn't. Like, there were close to 2 million people deported in each of his terms. But you ask people, no one's aware of that. So the facts are different. We are in a world where spectacle triumphs substance. So That's been the major problem. How can we fix that? We can fix that by sort of getting people to consciously check their behaviors. Whatever comes on WhatsApp, people just forward, which a lot of times without reading. No one stops to think, is this true or is this relevant? And the common answer is, oh, I just forwarded what I got. But because it's coming from you, someone who believes you starts thinking it's true. And there are a lot of issues like that happen. So we need to be aware of the litter that's around in terms of information. We need to sort of push back when we see that. There needs to be sort of some accountability for companies that create a free-for-all in terms of information. There has to be some kind of penalty for forwarding or whatever, some kind of cross-check. Content moderation. Content moderation with AI is still not perfect, but at least it does do some checking. But creating that awareness among people that this information is not, like, there was a time when you could say a picture was worth 1,000 words, right? That's no longer true with deepfakes and with AI generating videos. Like, you can give a prompt, and the other day I was seeing a video of a hippo swimming. And I didn't realize till then that hippos don't swim. But there's a video of a hippo swimming, and all you have to do is give a prompt in one of these AI kind of content generators, create a video of hippo swimming, and you get that. So we are in that world. So we need to sort of become those informed, conscientious, aware consumers. That probably is the first step.
Professor, when we speak about the power of communication, we need to also speak about how communication can be weaponized against persons and groups. If we take a look at Adolf Hitler's Germany, a crucial aspect of his rise to power was his ability to manipulate the media and journalism to shape public opinion and start propaganda and frame dangerous narratives. In the present context as well, we see many authoritarian regimes across jurisdictions engaging in this. How must we counter this?
It's not easy. I mean, you're right. I mean, there is a rise, there's a shift to the right, there's a rise in authoritarianism in a lot of countries, but it's not just, it's information, but it's also a symptom of the times we are in, right? I personally feel it's because we are dealing with a generation that feels entitled to everything without having earned the right to enjoy that. And I tell my students this all the time, because earlier generations knew the value of all these things. We are in a world where we have increased consumerism, you have increased access to all this, and a lot more affluence than before. But it has come at the expense of our personal responsibility. It has come at the expense of us sort of giving up on our values that really matter. Because everything is about, do I have the latest car? Do I have the latest building? Have I supersized my house? And especially in America, that's the case. I mean, in a world where you have enough grain to sort of solve the world hunger problem. You have so many people going hungry. It's not because of the availability of resources. It's because of the power differential that's there. The inequality persists. It benefits a lot of people. I mean, look at the number of people who became rich during the COVID-19 crisis, right? The top kind of group really earned a lot more money than the rest of the world, while the rest of the world was trying to figure out this epidemic. So we have an unequal system, and so that's one of the major problems that we need to look at.
Professor, in the aftermath of World War II, the world kind of came together to rethink human rights and prioritize it. And alongside that, we saw media ethics, journalistic integrity, understanding the role of communication. All of these also were prioritized. From then to now, Do you believe that journalistic integrity has thrived, or in this digital age, where are we when it comes to that aspect?
In the digital age, the potential for greatness is there. But in my opinion, and I'm saying this specifically because in my opinion, the golden age of journalism has passed, right? And for a number of reasons, but also because of increased focus on revenue, on profits, and media is an industry at the end of the day, right? So
Sure.
they are looking at the loss of revenue through, earlier they had sort of a limited market. They were regular channels of like government subsidies and like ad revenues, and your subscribers were not the reason for your profits. Your subscribers were what you were selling to the advertisers, kind of thing, which happens even now, right? Even today when someone says Google is free or Facebook is free, I say, no, you are the product, right? So people don't realize that. So in terms of journalism, that is what's happening now. All these online platforms are sort of creating all kinds of stories that can attract people. And as I keep saying, like creating that spectacle over substance. So they can get the eyeballs, they can get the ratings, they can get the revenue. And then it doesn't matter if it's factual or not, because it's become opinionated analysis. It's not journalism anymore. No one's giving you facts and saying this is what happened today. That used to be there before. Like someone might say, yeah, like news was never objective. It wasn't, but you knew where it was coming from. Now you don't. Now you go on YouTube, you can find a million different views.
Yeah.
So in terms of journalism, I think it's sort of morphing into sort of a kind of system where you'll get social influencers, news influencers who'll have their own kind of groups that subscribe to the way they cater to them. But you won't have a balanced kind of news anymore.
Professor, also speak to us about how AI is impacting journalism.
AI is changing the very nature of journalism. And like you have predictive AI, you have generative AI, you have content moderation, you have sort of other kinds of AI. But what's happening is, if you look at, let's say, making a news show and you want graphics for that, earlier you had to have a graphic artist or you had to have someone work on a mission. Now all you do is give a prompt and it generates that graphic for you, right? Earlier you needed pictures for certain kinds of stories. Now AI does that for you. But especially what is concerning is a lot of news agencies are now using AI to generate news, right? So if you look at some of the news stories now, it says generated by AI, automatically generated, not checked for content. Now, if you're not checked for content credibility, now what's the whole point of generating news if you're not checking it for? And I've seen this happen with a lot of news about Wall Street, right? When financial information, like some company announces results or whatever, the whole focus has been who's the first one to get the news out rather than checking the credibility of that news. So that has been a problem. And so in that sense, I don't think we are going to have journalism in the form that used to be, where it was a social watchdog of society. It used to sort of put governments on alert. Having said that, with the news of President Trump's Attorney General nominee sort of pulling back, is actually, I think, sort of a feather in the cap for journalists, because they were the ones who were keeping the story alive about all his kinds of issues. And that, I think, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but I think that's what led to his pulling his nomination. So there are small glimmers of hope.
We are in conversation with Professor Sundeep Muppidi. We're going for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
people's platform.
Companies play better politics than the politicians of today.
We are not supposed to play with the people's expectation. Then it will be a huge disaster.
When you're bankrupt and when you're going to bankruptcy, two different.
The grandfather is saying it is going to take this long. What does he know?
It's about the lack of sense of humor in Sri Lankans.
Issues that matter the most. Unfiltered discussions. Real answers. Face to face. Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on TV1.
ජාතික මෙහෙවරින් අපි කතා බහ කරන්නේ පුරුෂ පාර්ශවයට කාන්තා පාර්ශවයට වෙනසක් නැතුව ආයුර්වේදයට අනුව ලස්සන වෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා.
හොඳම මොයිස්චරයිස් එක තමයි කොමඩු.
යම්කිසි වයස් මට්ටම් වලට පැමිණෙනකොට ඇතිවෙන බෝන් නොවන රෝග තත්ත්වයන් තුලදී කොයි ආකාරයෙන්ද ඇස ආරක්ෂා කරගන්නේ?
බහුලවම අන්ධභාවයට පත්වන රෝගී තත්ත්ව ගත්තොත් ඇත්තටම ලෝකේ ලංකාවේ දෙකම නම්බර් 1 ඇත්තටම තියෙන සුද ඇහි සුද.
නිරාමිෂ සිතුවිලි වලින් තමයි පිබිදෙන්නේ. ඒනට ප්‍රශ්නේ ටික වෙලාවක් යනකොට වෙනස් පැත්තකට යන්න පුළුවන්.
මූලික අරමුණ සියදිවි හානි වැළැක්වීම වුණාට ඕනම කෙනෙකුට ඕනම ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඕනම ගැටලුවක් ගැන කතා කරන්න අපිත් එක්ක යොමු වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
ජාතික මෙහෙවර සතියේ දිනවල උදෑසන 11ට.
Step away from the conventional art of storytelling. Get ready for the Newsfirst Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfikar Farzan.
The people's platform.
Welcome back. I'm in conversation with Professor of Digital Media and Journalism at the University of Hartford, Professor Sundeep Muppidi. Professor, when we speak about media, it's referred to as the fourth pillar alongside the executive, legislature, judiciary. But in the times we're in, does that seem almost archaic and outdated or also utopian? We can't look at it with rose-hued glasses. How do you view this?
I'm hearing this after such a long time in terms of someone referring to the media as the fourth pillar, because that was probably in the 1960s, 1950s, when you had a sort of moral obligation to society in terms of the kind of resources that you had. But fast forwarding to now, at least in India and a lot of other countries, you see major media networks being owned by rich families or being owned by politicians or political parties, right? And when you have there's a lot of concentration in ownership across platforms, right? Radio, television, and other kinds of things. So what that leads to is a conflict of interest, right? And if there is a story that sort of criticizes what the other industries that the owners are in, if there is a story that goes against the political party that owns the channel, then I have not seen the objectivity or the neutrality in that reporting, right?
Yeah.
And for obvious reasons.
Of course.
So I see that as something archaic. I agree with you. It's archaic to refer to the media as the fourth pillar, because that's no longer the case. Now I see it more as an industry that's in it for the profits, that's in it for the money, and for the social and political capital that they get.
But we also see the rise of independent media outlets which rely on crowdfunding or public donations. And that sort of format, that template has also worked to an extent. And we also, apart from that, see how investigative journalists, for example, play a massive role across countries in holding governments accountable. This is a key function of media and journalism, and this continues to thrive.
It does, and you're right. There are a lot of independent, private, smaller, either journalists or NGOs or groups, especially community radio and other kinds of things, that do good in society, right? But the very fact that they are doing so well is a validation of my point that the larger networks are not doing that, right? The larger networks are more about the star, creating the star persona about their anchors, are creating the star persona about their networks. But by the very nature of their institutions, they do not antagonize the powers that be for a lot of obvious reasons, right? So that's where it's created a space for committed journalists to start doing their own podcasts or doing their own blogs or doing their own smaller newsletters or kind of thing that have definitely made a difference, right? But increasingly you see around the world governments are sort of bringing in legislation that even now like goes after even individual people that might post, let's say, something on X or social media that might criticize a particular government or a particular leader. And in a lot of countries, you see cases being registered against that kind of opposition, right? So we are in that kind of world where you have media and you have like smaller media that are doing the role that the larger media needs to be doing. In terms of investigative journalism, a lot of these media networks used to have a lot more budgets for investigative stories.
Right.
You don't see that anymore. And I would think with the kind of money that's floating around now, that if you're really committed, those would be the kinds of stories you'd see. But I don't see that happening. Maybe it is, but I haven't noticed it.
Professor, facts, accuracy, these have taken a back seat and are almost being replaced by continuous spewing of varying narratives. And we see this at an exponential rate across platforms. Everyone has a mic. This can be very dangerous for society. And we need to have coherent, concrete mechanisms to counter the dangerousness of this all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the world we are in now, where people, I mean, like, even like, I don't know many people who, when they Google information, go beyond the first page, right, of links that it provides. But if you look at the top, it says more than 1 million hits or whatever, right? And there are algorithms that are driving that. But also, like we spoke about algorithms before and the echo chambers and the rabbit holes that people populate. But what's happening is people tend to believe what they want to believe. And they have no incentive to cross-check or verify the authenticity of that. What is driving it is the in-group thing. They want to belong to certain groups. And so they don't question any information as long as it's within the group belief, right? And so there's a lot of tribalism, as it's called. And what it's led to is this belief that it's between the us and the other kind of thing. Everything us is superior, informative, truthful, whatever, and anything that is about the other is the thing to worry about. So any kind of point you take, any kind of line you draw, that's where the flashpoints are. And what it has led to is, for lack of a better word, a paranoia about the other, that they are the threat to us, that they are the threat to society, that they need to be dealt with. And in every country, in every continent, you see that happening. And so it's easy for politicians who want to create trouble, or for politicians who want to rile up certain groups, or anyone else, right, to feed in misinformation and sort of fan those flames. And that's only going to increase more. And what we need to do is to sort of work on developing the media literacy of consumers, but more importantly, the critical thinking skills, the competencies of viewers and readers and listeners, so they can separate out what is good information from bad information. Because we are in the world of deep fakes, right? I can get you a video that can show President Trump or President Obama or Kamala Harris or whatever to say anything I want them to say, right? But when you see that, you need to have the critical ability to say, oh, this can't be true, this is not true. But if it's in line with your thinking, people generally accept without questioning where is it coming from and can it possibly be true. So especially in conflicts, that's going to happen a lot more.
Education needs to cater to this. We need to teach our children about the importance of fact-checking. There needs to be a syllabus in schools, in universities, at vocational training centers, at workplaces. Are there efforts underway at present?
There's been a concerted effort to add media literacy as part of the curriculum. Like even when I was the Secretary General of AMIC 10 years ago in Singapore, we tried doing that, where we would get teachers trained on imparting media literacy among schools in Asia Pacific. But the UNESCO is trying to do that a lot. The only other problem with that is media literacy is not just enough by itself. You also need to sort of give the critical thinking skills. You need to give the sort of digital literacy skills. And so the curriculum that used to be traditional curriculum needs to change with AI especially, right?
Yeah.
A lot of faculty now worry about students using ChatGPT to write their assignments, right? But it's like a calculator. You can't stop people from using a calculator. But if they don't know how to add or multiply or subtract, it doesn't matter what you punch into in a calculator. The same as with ChatGPT or any kind of AI that generates content. So what is important is to teach people the prompt engineering skills. How do you write a prompt? How do you sort of get information? And how do you work with that information? So the whole focus has to move to what is the point of learning? Is it to teach content per se as in knowledge? Or is it how to use knowledge that's easily available in Google or whatever, and to work with it and to run with it, kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, like literacy at different levels.
Professor, your expertise spans communication for social change and empowerment. From a societal point of view, what is the role of journalism in social empowerment?
Idealistically, journalism is key to social empowerment, right? It goes back to your earlier question about the fourth pillar and whatever, like that's where it was the social watchdog of society. It kept a watch on people in power and like whether something was being misused or whether everything was getting to where it was getting or not in terms of resources, which ironically with AI now is actually made it much easier for journalists. So if there's a tender contract that's put out, right, instead of reading 200 pages to figure out if all the tender conditions were met, journalists can now basically ask AI to give that prompt and ask it to see where there's a deviation from those kinds of things. So in terms of the ease of exploring those kinds of stories, there's a lot. But is there that intention or the motivation or the incentive? I don't see that, and not for lack of wanting to do it. It's just that a lot of journalists find themselves in a situation where it's not conducive to their own careers to pursue those lines of investigation.
Professor, in what ways can journalism balance the need for objectivity with the responsibility to advocate for social justice?
Idealistically, journalism has a responsibility to sort of advocate for social justice and the betterment of society, right? Having said that, it's no longer the case for a number of reasons that we already talked about, which is like it's more about the kind of profit-making model that we are in. A lot of journalists individually that I have met are committed to better society, are committed to doing stories that are important and make a difference, but they are part of a system that doesn't value that anymore. It's more about working with a system that if they're interested in a good career, right? And so they take the same story and present it differently based on the kind of approach or the kind of mission of that particular channel or the network or whatever. So like CNN and Fox might be doing the same story, and while they're reporting the same, taking the same information, they're sort of using it to promote their viewpoint for their kind of audiences. It doesn't mean they're not aware of what is the actual truth, but it's subjective. So in that sense, I don't think journalism is objective, right? In terms of their motivation for making a difference, I don't think the present environment is conducive for large organizations to take up that mission because it's not profitable.
The politicization of journalism, how do you view that?
The answer lies in the fact that every political party or most political parties in India own a newspaper, own a television channel, and I'm sure that's the case in a lot of other countries where even if they don't directly own, they are sort of they're patrons of certain networks. So in that sense, that has already happened, right? So even in terms of audiences, once audiences migrate to a particular channel, they are diehard fans of that channel. There are not many that sort of objectively view the other side.
When we look at the evolution of journalism, and we take student journalists, for example, do you think that what is being taught in classrooms is being translated into their real world work?
It's interesting you ask that, because what we are teaching in the classroom is all the ideal or the idealistic journalist and what it needs to be in terms of pursuing social justice and making a difference and becoming a social watchdog and all that kind of thing. When they get into the job market or when they get into a job, most editors have told me they have to get these new recruits unlearn what they were taught in the classroom and relearn how or what is done on the job. So there is a gap between journalism education and journalism practice.
Okay.
Having said that, like journalism it's not like everything that journalism education is doing is right. What they need to be concentrating on is to teach students in this day and age, right, how to write a proper story, where to go do their research, how to visualize information, how to analyze information, which again editors have said we get reporters who can't take data and visualize that data, who can't analyze that data, or who use ChatGPT to write a story. So I think there's an element of truth to both sides. So, but there is definitely a gap.
Professor, my final question to you: how must society make good journalism possible, and also how must journalism mobilize people and effect real world change?
So in terms of journalism making a difference and mobilizing change, first we need to change our definition of journalism. Journalism is no longer the traditional top-down broadcast kind of model, right? So our perception of journalism as something that comes out of big media institutions or newspapers or whatever has to change. what needs to be redefined is, in this day and age, when there's so much facts and information out there, and opinions and conspiracies and misinformation and disinformation out there, what does journalism look like in this kind of environment, right? It is more about the shift from the model of that shifts from pushing content that was in the broadcast era to an age where it's about pulling content, right?
Okay.
So earlier you had to sit at 6:30 in the evening to watch primetime news in the US, right? Everyone sat around the dinner table and watched news. Now it's video on demand, it's news on demand, right? But there are 100 different channels of news. And each of them needs content, each of them is generating content, each of them has a certain play on how they're reporting stories, what kind of niche. So it's more niche journalism now. It's catering to specialized audiences. And so when you're looking at journalism, your expectation has to change about one size fits all. It's about which bite do you want of this entire pizza that's out there, and making sure that you're getting different views in that. It's not just, okay, like my opinion is my fact. It's more about, like at what point do you sort of also look at other sources, sometimes more than one source, actually all the time more than one source, before you can believe a story. And over a period of time, you get a sense for the credibility of that organization or that source that's putting out that news, and your critical ability to spot fake news and call it out when you see fake news. So the future of journalism is in terms of the ability to cater to specialized niche audiences, the ability to distinguish what is generated by AI, and the ability to critically think through, right, and make a difference.
Thank you very much, Professor Sundeep Muppidi, for this insightful discourse. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again next Friday. Good night.
The People's Platform.